we are reviewing the first half of Amazon Prime's Invincible season 2. So I know there's a few numbers there. So it's Invincible. This is the second season of Invincible, but they just released the first half of this second season. The second half is coming out next year. So we'll work with what we got. There's such a big break that it's totally worth going through this first half, this first 4 episodes. I don't remember it being just 8, but I guess it is. I was looking back. It is just 8. That's kind of more of the modern day seasons, but they put a lot of money and everything into this. So let's just start off with that. So these overarching ideas with the money into it. Obviously, this was a big hit, so people really enjoyed this. So Amazon was totally okay with pouring some money into it, and I think you can see the difference, the better quality of the animation really right away. It's not like crazy readily apparent, because I think the first season had some pretty good animation, but just sharper lines, smoother transition, little faster action here and there, I think is laid in throughout these episodes here in comparison to the first season. So I appreciate that. It's always great when what you're watching gets a little bit more visually appealing. It can only ratchet up the excitement. So that's always great. The second overarching thing I want to talk about is, and this was very similar to the first season as well, and there's a few deviations, which we can talk about 1 or 2 deviation here, but the big aspect just being that, this is a comic book, right? This is a pretty famous comic book by Robert Kirkman. That some of you might not know, but I've read a decent amount of it, and it's a really great comic book. First of all, I have the whole first volume. It's like 44 issues, something like that. And to be honest, we haven't even eclipsed that in these 2 seasons, or the seasons so far, and from what I think is going to be the rest of season 2, which is pretty crazy that there's so much story left to tell. I absolutely love that. But just how closely this show adheres and goes stride and stride with the comic books, it's pretty impressive. It's a really, really faithful adaptation, and it's good. I think it's just so good because of how great the source material is. There's some other ones that come to mind, recent ones, the Umbrella Academy and The Boys, who the shows are very not faithful adaptations to the comic books, because in the comic books, there's some of them, there's just not a lot that actually happens. Some of it's really difficult to make that transition to the screen. I need to add comedy and such, and those other ones, there's not a whole lot of comedy and just characters. It's a lot more of just building the world and showing this cool idea that I have for you. I think The Boys is even more guilty with that, but that's another product of Amazon Prime, so they've done a great job adapting these superhero comics into these really watchable shows, and we've seen them that they can do that, right? So it's not that this studio is not capable of doing so. It's just that Invincible was such a readily adaptable comic book. Yeah, some of those other ones that I talked about, the other comics, so Umbrella Academy and The Boys, they're just, I don't want to call them bland. I think the Boys is actually a little bland, the comic book, but they just don't touch into the depth and the play-by-play and the characters' emotions, and really just the length that something like a show or a movie really requires. A lot of times it's more of an overview. Just the medium itself allows it to be a lot more fast-paced. You're really just kind of sliding through those pages, and the story's got to move fast or you're going to lose interest relatively quickly. So there's nothing wrong with it. But Robert Kirkman really took the time to make his Invincible run feel like a show or a movie or some other type of entertainment other than a comic book. It had the really intimate moments. It really dug into each of the characters. They became really well-rounded people. That it dealt with the everyday occurrences that make a TV show interesting, that you can really delve into. The show didn't even really need to make too many leaps or make a lot up. Actually, the showrunners of Invincible here must have a really easy time, to be honest. Not to say that they're not doing any work. I'm sure they're doing an awful lot of work, but Kirkman really just gave them an amazing script. He told them exactly what was going to happen, and they're just taking it and saying, "Yes, sir. No notes. I'm just going to do exactly what you wrote down here," which is good. You've seen some of those animated ones, and even the live action ones with the MCU and the DCU or that, but maybe even more aptly comparison for this. For the DC animated universes is some of them they really just copy and paste the comic book, and others they make up a lot and stretch it. Whether they need to or not is kind of up in the air, I suppose. But I just appreciate how they recognized that the source material they're taking was so complete and so amazing already that they didn't have to do much, because less here really is more. Moving on to the actual plot and the actual episodes of this first half of this season 2 here, a big theme is grief, right? Because we left off last season with Omni-Man revealing himself as a sleeper agent, if you want to call him that, and causing a lot of carnage and really revealing his treachery, backstabbing his friends, and most importantly here, at least I would say, family, calling his wife a pet. That's always, I think, the line that really hit home. It hit home again. I'm gonna maybe talk about this a lot here. Hit home in the comics, but actually I think they really honed in on it in this one. It was more of a 1, maybe 2 line in the comics. They did bring it up a few times here because it's so impactful. Calling your wife, calling your mother a pet is pretty crazy. But they are left with the aftermath of what Omni-Man did. So we enter into it with this really great montage of Invincible, of Mark Grayson, just kind of going around saving different people. It's just kind of ethereal montage, and it's old, classic kind of smooth rock band sound, and he's just thinking about the grief, and he's stopping by places where Omni-Man hurt him and hurt other people and such, really processing all of this, because it's been a while for us since this last season, but for him, I don't remember what the time frame was, but I remember Cecil was harping on him that it wasn't enough time, and whatever the time was, I remember agreeing, whatever number that was, he needs more time to process his dad, for God's sakes, revealed himself as an evil sleeper agent that was trying to conquer the planet this entire time, and that was lying about everything he ever said, basically. And he got his ass just pummeled, absolutely destroyed. I don't know if superheroes like him can get brain damage, but if they can, I think he probably has it. He should take it easy for a while, but he's not going to. He definitely has this grief and this sense of duty to pick up where his father left before he went crazy, and really more so really make amends for what his father did after he revealed himself. So that's a lot of it. And of course the other big area of grief is Omni-Man's wife, Mark Grayson's mother. There's a lot going on throughout the entire time. She's really breaking down at different points. She's trying to get back into society and her job and all that, and having, understandably, again, a really hard time. Even more so from Mark. He was a baby and he grew up with it, and that's all he knew. But she was a fully grown woman when Omni-Man started wooing her and dating her and eventually marrying her and having a kid with her. I mean, it's just, you can't even imagine something like that. It's got to be heart-wrenching and just destroying your entire life. And she was talking about that she was in absolute shambles. She just didn't know what to do with herself. Some of it, I'm sure people can kind of rationalize that, relate that to a really bad breakup, but I think this might be a little bit more extreme. And rightfully so. And in this, the scale was shown to how extreme it was with everything that she's going through, everything that she's done. She doesn't know what to do. I really liked the support group that she went to. I remember that being in the comics as well. And then so the big thing with the support group, we're gonna go into spoilers if I didn't already mention that. But so in this support group, she kept her mouth shut for all of one session, I think, and then she went out to drinks with that guy who was, what is it, Green Rush, something along those lines. One of the superheroes from the Guardians of the Globe. One of their husband or boyfriend or whatever it is who is now dead, and they were really bonding, trauma bonding, and explaining everything. I guess she wasn't really, because she was trying to keep that the one that she lost, right? He's not even dead, he's just gone. Was Omni-Man, who betrayed and killed the Guardians of the Globe. And what she probably could have kept it secret for a while longer. Go to a few sessions and maybe build yourself up and, you know, endear them to you a little bit more before you pull that plug. But either way, she did it, and he totally just freaked out and not welcome back at the that support group anymore. It in a less cynical take, I think that person would have maybe not forgiven her or forgiven Omni-Man. It's not even her, right? It's Omni-Man, but embraced her and recognized that she is still in pain, and they would have gone through more of a healing process. But we're not in that less cynical take. We are in the world of Invincible, and she was really unceremoniously kicked out of that. So really, maybe her one little thread, one little hope of dealing with all of this grief in a healthy way was gone. And then at the end, it seemed like she was really taking it upon herself. This message is maybe more, you have to do it yourself. No matter what you're going to do, you have to claw yourself out of your hole. You got to put yourself back together, which is true in some ways. In really all ways, it's always got to be you. In the end, it's got to be you who does it. But things like therapy and such are only tools. They just help you along. And I don't think this has an anti-therapy message, but this is, I guess, when therapy is not available, even more so. You just gotta pick yourself up by your collar and get going. In the first episode, I liked how they played with the title card. Not a big deal, but really fun. Right, so in the first season, you'd show Invincible, and they would have some line, and it would lead up to, and then it would cut it and say Invincible. In this, they just kept doing that, and they kept making that really painful, awkward pause, and you wanted to see the title card, but they just said Invincible either way. They did it, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 times. It just built up the tension a little bit more and more until they finally did it at the end. So that was good. That was just a fun little tease. Showrunners behind there are having themselves a good time. A few things I want to touch on. So they go with the multiversal bad version of this character of Invincible, our title character. Definitely not the first time, not an incredibly unique idea, but good effect so far. It's pretty small. We'll probably see more of that. I actually haven't read too much into Invincible, but I've definitely heard that there's stuff like that. There's getting into some multiversal things. Great introduction of a villain with, I don't remember what his name was, but the scientist, the black guy with the mustache that can see throughout all of the different, or can travel throughout all of the different universes, and he gets a bunch of versions of himself, and he's gonna put it all into his brain, and then he gets messed up. You really see that you really feel that he's trying to be a good guy, and he's trying to do good things and use his power for positive moves. But when Invincible blows it all up, and it's kind of because he's distracted and dealing with his grief and everything, and he looks all malformed, and it's definitely going to be something that just messing with his brain too. Although looking like that's gotta not help. It is funny how with most villains, there's usually some type of really, bad thing that happens to them, whether it's, a loved one or just their whole life falls apart, something like that. But also it has to add that now they're ugly or something, right? Lex Luthor losing his hair, the Joker becoming pale skinned and green hair and all of that. I'm sure there's a bunch of other ones. I can't think of any great examples, but there's got to be other ones. But it's just funny, just to add on at the very end, you've had all this terrible time. Oh, also you look really bad, so you can't go into just a normal establishment or have a normal life. Lex Luthor is a little bit different, right? I mean, he's just bald. He could wear a wig if he wanted to, and also there's nothing wrong with being bald, but him and his just megalomania makes him think that way. Just a funny little anecdote, I guess, and it really drives it home, makes the evil appear on the outside, and in some ways gives them not a whole lot of choice. A few more little beats. Enjoyed the Batman and Robin analog, I guess, whatever his name is. It's the sidekick, the legacy character stepping in, but he went crazy. The whole Gotham City, but it's cursed and it comes in and it's dark. And the whole dark dimension was a good little twist as well. Stripped straight from the comic books. Again, I gotta stop saying that, but it's gotta stop being true. But another good little adventure, building up the world. I liked going into tag along with Alan the Alien. We're going into the big Galactic Senate and whatever you want to call it, and he's explaining to them who Mark Grayson is, that he's a good Viltrumite, that they had a kid, and things along these lines. And the big guy Thaddeus. If you can hear the voice, listen closer. You're not too close because I think it's pretty obvious. It's the voice of Optimus Prime. Love it. I haven't heard him in too many things. He's got such a distinctive voice. He probably can't be in too many things because his it just captures everything. I mean, anytime he speaks, it's really going to drag attention to him. But if he's the supreme wise overlord or whatever, he's going to want attention dragged to him. So that one makes sense. Gives him a little bit of work here, I suppose. And then Alan just gets, beat down. It's brutal. We hadn't seen too much real violence until this moment. I think in the second season, it was ugly. I mean, the comic book did make it look really nasty, but they just did everything to him. I mean, the eyes and the guts and just everything. The zero gravity floating in space. I mean, you want to show a gnarly picture there. It's definitely with all the particles floating in space and everything. It's just, whew. And then we get to, I think, the big moment here in this is the return of Omni-Man. Again, people who knew this story knew it was coming, but it did really good effect here. Left a cliffhanger in episode 3, and then took a while to explain, but he did explain some of it. I think he was a little bit more emotional here than in the comics, which was good, showing a little bit more that he was torn. It explained that in the comics, but didn't show it as much. Showed it a lot better here. The Mark Grayson's brother, I'll spoil it, his name turns out to be Oliver. I'm sure they'll explain here. They give him the name, or he chooses the name or whatever. He becomes a really fascinating character. But they're dealing with all this. The Viltrumites come down. They kind of want to train Mark or whatever, but they get here too fast, and they beat the crap out of him. So some more awesome action, some really, really in-your-face, gnarly action. Again, Omni-Man is narrating it. Like you got to fight to murder. If you're not going to fight to murder, it's not going to work. You're going to die. You really feel it. This is Mortal Kombat here. A different thing. Doesn't matter. Mark held his own a little bit more in the comics. I kind of liked how he just got his absolute head caved in because he didn't know what was going on, because he learned out he needed to train more. That's where he discovers that he can train and get stronger. In this, it kind of just, Omni-Man just tells him to work a little harder, and it works, but he still doesn't win, still doesn't do a good job. But in the end, we get the great ultimatum that we do in the other ones that just leads to so much and builds so much tension that if Mark doesn't go back to Earth and take over for Omni-Man and really prepare Earth for conquering from the Viltrumite Empire, then they're going to come in, they're going to do it themselves, and when they do it, a lot more people are going to die. Just laying the groundwork for some great tension, great waiting, maybe like a Dragon Ball arc or whatever. They're telling you this is when we're going to invade, this is when we're going to come, this is when we're going to fight. Until then, you have to train and learn and all that. Those are always the best, because you have this goal at the end of your mind, but there's a bunch of things that can happen in the meantime, and you see all the efforts that your characters go through, and you hope and you pray that it's going to be enough, and it's usually maybe just not enough, and just barely the end of it is covered by willpower. Those always make for some inspirational and, down to the wire, exciting action pieces. So I think that is it for this Invincible Season 2 Part 1. I am looking forward to the finale of this season here, the last 4 episodes. I've heard some really good things, or at least Kirkman and some of the other showrunners have promised some good things, but I've not been disappointed as of yet, so I'm sure I won't be in the future. This is some really good stuff, top of the market animation at least, and probably top of the market for superheroes in general, especially because the really suppression of DC putting out stuff and Marvel just stinking up the joint with their stuff. Some people might be a little wary of it because it is animation, but hopefully they can get over that, because this is some of the best superhero and really overall action out there.